Hello and welcome to Gamer Maven. Today, we will take a look at the newly released game Banishers Ghosts of New Eden, a third-person action role-playing game developed by Don't Nod and published by Focus Entertainment. The game has a rich story which puts you in the shoes of two Banishers named Antea Duarte and Red Mac Wraith. The pair's mission is to investigate a haunted city named New Eden where the inhabitants suffer from very bad and disturbing nightmares. The story starts with a steep turn when Antea becomes a ghost herself and they face a series of very difficult decisions in order to determine the conclusion of their new relationship. You can control both characters and they complement each other's fighting style. Red uses conventional weaponry such as sabers and rifles, and Antea uses spirit abilities. When playing with Antea, you switch to a spectral world which allows her to reveal hidden elements that provide materials and resources. The interactions with the spectral world are also used into unveiling secrets about the world and main story progression. I will keep it brief, so I will not give you any spoilers. The game is running on the Unreal Engine 5 engine and it is a very smooth experience despite the ordinary Unreal Engine stuttering problems. The world is polished and beautiful, making you eager to want to explore it. The quality of the textures is good without unreasonable amount of video memory used. As you can see, the visuals of this game are really beautiful with amazing character design and environment construction. The lighting looks really good as well, even though the game does not have ray tracing. Here you can see that even at 4K maximum settings and no upscaling, the game performs extremely well, with an average of over 150 frames per second and 5 GB usage of video memory. I played the game at the highest difficulty and the combat feels challenging and rewarding. You get visual cues to track the enemy attacks and projectiles. While fighting enemies, a banish meter will fill up, which is more like an ultimate attack that deals tremendous damage to a single target. Antea and Red have a synergic and interdependent combat mechanic which allows for Red to deal more damage to creatures from the living world, while Antea deals more damage to creatures from the spectral world. Antea has a spirit points meter for her attacks, meaning you cannot use her attacks all the time, being forced to return to combat with Red in order to fill back the spirit meter. Enemies are mostly predictable, and once you learn the way to avoid their attacks and their movement, combat will not feel as challenging as you initially thought. That of course depends very much on the difficulty on which you are playing the game. If you want to truly immerse into the combat, we suggest to challenge yourself and select one of the higher difficulties. It will really feel satisfying to destroy those ghosts after they give you a headache. Like the headache this bugged wolf fighting from under the ground gave me when I saw it. Of course, this is a minor bug and things like this could happen in any game and are hard to test and fiddle around. You level up by gaining experience from killing enemies and completing missions. After leveling up, you earn skill points which can be spent in skill trees in order to unlock new abilities and combos. The way you spend the skill points is not final, and you can change them around to see what suits your style best. You can also find collectible resources scattered around the world which are used to improve your items and gear. You can only make these improvements when you reach a campsite. The campsite gives you options to check your inventory in order to upgrade your equipment, to check your skill trees for both Red and Antea, to fast travel and to rest, therefore refilling your health potions. Let's now take a look at the graphical settings and the way they impact the graphical fidelity and performance of the game. As usual, we will discuss each graphical setting one by one and suggest how to optimize it based on the resource usage and visual impact. This is the video settings menu. Here you can see that I'm playing the game at 4K resolution with unlimited frame rate, no VSync and NVIDIA DLAA activated. We are also not using frame generation for the purpose of this video. There are graphics quality presets available ranging from low settings to very high settings, but you can also customize specific settings independently. Anti-aliasing quality cannot be changed because we are using NVIDIA DLAA. There is also a hard disk drive compatibility mode which should improve the performance in case you do not have the game installed on an SSD, a nice feature to see on a modern game. Starting with a cloudy forest scene, we can see that the view distance quality setting affects the level of detail of the grass in center of the screen. On the very high setting, the grass is very dense and is scattered throughout a bigger area than any other lower setting. The performance impact of this setting is only 4% from very high to low, but we notice an important difference of 27% in terms of the 1% low frame rate. However, this difference is not really noticeable and does not change the feeling of the game. From the optimization standpoint, I suggest the very high setting since there is not any noticeable increase in performance and the visual fidelity difference is discernible. The foliage quality setting has the most dramatic impact on the performance and on the visual fidelity of the game. We can clearly see the difference in the level of detail of the trees between the different quality settings. On the very high and high quality settings, the branches look more dense and with prominent ambient occlusion, while on the low setting, the branches are rare and look withered. The quality of the grass is also affected by this setting. We can notice that as we bring the setting down, grass becomes scarce and the quality of the 3D model for tall grass and bushes decreases. Speaking of optimization, I recommend choosing the high setting as there is not a big difference compared to the very high setting and the performance and stability gain is considerable. You could also use the medium setting if you do not mind less ambient occlusion on the tree branches. Besides that, it looks really similar to the high setting. The low setting I suggest to be used just in case you really need to squeeze extra performance, as this brings down the quality of the foliage drastically. Looking at the texture's quality setting, we are mostly interested in the video memory usage because the visual quality of the textures does not change that much between the different levels. This is a very surprising and welcome exception compared to how much video memory games use these days without really displaying that visual level. The game uses 5 GB of video memory at the very high setting, making it not a problem for any video card from the last 2 generations, as most of them have above 6 GB of video memory. We notice no difference in the average frame rate, but a weird behavior in the 1% low frame rate. This behavior varies depending on the scene and does not have a noticeable impact on the game. There is no micro stuttering except when you load in new areas of the map. I suggest the high setting if you feel like the game runs smoother on your machine, taking advantage of that 18% boost in the 1% low frame rate. Otherwise, if you do not notice a difference in stability, the very high setting is the way to go, as you will get the best possible looking textures with the same average frame rate. Great job on the video memory optimization here. Hopefully we get to see more like this in the upcoming releases. There are no noticeable differences in this cloudy forest scene when we change the effects quality setting. It seems changing this setting does not impact the average frame rate as much as the 1% low frame rate. I decided to test another scene. Here we have more light coming from both the sun and the torch. There are also some particles flying from the torch, some interactions with the atmospheric fog, and some particles in the distance. Again, I do not notice any differences between the quality levels, but definitely all the things I mentioned happening in this scene are considered effects, as the 1% low frame rate drastically changes when switching from high to medium or low. I thought maybe we could see and compare some more of these effects when in combat. In this scene, I am fighting some wolves and ghosts. The fighting moves and combos produce visual effects, and also using Antea and her fighting abilities generates visual effects on the screen. The size of the fire in the torch seems smaller and less dense on the low quality setting. The radius of the effects generated by the combat moves seem also smaller. I suggest going for the medium quality setting in order to gain between 18% and 30% better 1% low frame rate values, therefore stability, without compromising the look of the visual effects in this game. The shadows quality setting changes the opacity and resolution of the shadows. There is a very small difference in opacity when switching from the very high quality setting to the high quality setting. This comes with no performance cost at all. Switching to the medium quality setting, we can see that the resolution and coverage of the shadows is smaller, but the shadows are still stable. And this setting does not produce a significant difference in visual fidelity. The only big difference is when we switch to the low quality setting and the shadows are now flickering and unstable. My suggestion for optimization is to choose the very high setting if your hardware can handle it and you do not see a low value of the 1% low frame rate. Otherwise, the recommendation is to choose the medium setting, which still provides great shadows with increased game stability. We see there is an increase of 37% in the 1% low frame rate between the very high or high quality settings and the medium setting. Again, I want to mention that low values of the 1% low frame rate can also be noticed on the frame time graph as spikes. This means that the gameplay experience will have frequent stutters, which will give you an unpleasant experience. The frame time graph should be as smooth as possible for a good experience. The post-process quality setting usually changes effects such as depth of field, bloom, chromatic aberration, vignette, lens flare, and the list could go on. Here we do not see a big difference between the various quality settings in terms of visual fidelity. We see a small impact of 4% on the average frame rate between the very high quality setting and the low quality setting, but a bigger difference in terms of the 1% low frame rate when we change the post-process quality setting to low. I have also tested this setting on the first scene with the cloudy forest, and there is no big difference between the various quality settings here either. Maybe the fact that there is less lighting and atmospheric fog in the scene explains why the 1% low impact is 25% now compared to 50% on the previous scene. Since the visual fidelity gain is not noticeable, but there is a great gain in terms of gameplay stability, I suggest to choose the low quality setting for post-processing. I have gathered all the data, and now we can take a general view on how the game performs in the presented scenes. Here we have the average frame rate in the cloudy forest scene for each of the quality settings. The settings with the highest impact on the average frame rate are foliage and shadows. This makes complete sense since the area is filled with vegetation. Probably the shadows quality setting impact would have been greater if there was more lighting in this scene. View distance quality setting has a greater visual fidelity impact than performance impact, with it changing the level of detail for the objects further away from the camera. Looking at the 1% low frame rate for the same scene, we have pretty consistent results except for the foliage quality setting, which on the low setting brings down the quality of the foliage drastically, making the tree branches and bushes scarce and flat. On this graph, we see the frame rate impact of each setting when we go from the very high quality setting to the low quality setting. The average frame rate impact is considerable only for the foliage quality and shadows quality settings. That is because of the nature of the scene having a lot of vegetation. The 1% low frame rate impact might look very drastic on those two particular quality settings, but it really does not feel that noticeable in the game. The game still feels very robust and stable even at the very high quality setting and 1% low frame rate. There are no common and major spikes in the frame time graph, except for the case when you change big areas on the map. For the second scene, the sunny forest scene, I have plotted only the data which was relevant for the change of the scenery. Here we have the graph of the average frame rate, and the data is consistent to what we have seen previously. The 1% low frame rate suggests significant gains when we choose the low quality setting for shadows. But as we have seen before, this introduces some instability on the shadows and is not really worth it, especially since this difference is not noticeable in terms of game stability. Regarding post-processing quality and effects quality, the visual differences between the various quality settings are hard to detect and do not really justify the performance difference. Here we can see the frame rate impact for those settings we reviewed in the second scene. The 1% low frame rate boost is welcome when changing those settings, especially as we have seen previously, most of them do not have a noticeable or drastic visual impact. Finally, we look at the summary of the video memory usage. This game is really well optimized in terms of video memory, and most of the graphics cards from the last two generations will have no problem with that, as most of them have above 6 GB of video memory. You can keep the textures quality at the very high quality setting without any fear of running out of memory. To sum up, Banishers Ghosts of New Eden is a breath of fresh air from what we got used to with the recent releases. The game is well optimized, it does not have the usual Unreal Engine stuttering, and it has a bunch of performance assisting technologies such as DLSS, FSR, or even frame generation. We did not take a look at those technologies for the purpose of this video, but I might look at them in a future video. The game features adaptive difficulty, which means no matter what difficulty you chose, if you keep dying, the game will automatically adjust the difficulty for that segment in order to help you move on. Well, I learned that the hard way. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please consider leaving us a like. Also, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to get notified the moment we post a new video. You can leave your feedback and suggestions in the comment section down below, or you can join our Discord server. Thanks for watching!